talk. Glad to see so many people entering. Very exciting morning. So let's get this started. Hello and thank you everyone for attending the 2022 Food Justice Summit Feedback Meeting in the Middle, a collaborative effort between Adirondack Health Institute and the Adirondack Food Systems Network. My name is Lynn Trisna and I'm the Executive Director at the Pitney Meadows Community Farm. This session, Farming Smarter, Not Harder for Increased Resilience, is presented by Richard Wiswall of Cate Farm. Before we kick off this session, we would like to thank our sponsors. They helped us to make this year's event possible, and we are truly appreciative for their support. Thank you to our keynote and premier sponsor, New York State Health Foundation and Glens Falls National Bank and Trust Company. For a little bit of housekeeping, we wanted to review some brief housekeeping items. During this session, you'll be muted with video off for the entirety of the presentation. If you have any questions or comments, please place them in the chat and one of the Food Justice Summit staff members will be able to assist you. We'll be monitoring the chat to ensure all questions are addressed during the Q&A portion of the presentation. And if we have time at the end of the presentation, we'd really like to foster a group conversation. So we'll see if we can do that towards the end. All presentations for the 2022 Food Justice Summit are being recorded and will be archived on the Summit webpage. Lastly, we will be sending out a survey on Friday, February 25th, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Really looking forward to getting some involvement to hear how you liked it. And now I will turn over the presentation to Richard.
Hi there, everyone. I'm just going to load up and we'll be ready to go. Okay, a few housekeeping notes just so you don't have to take more notes than you need to. All these slides will be available to you so you don't have to copy them. And questions are welcome anytime. Put them in the chat box and Lynn or someone else will kind of filter through them and then feed them to me. And if I will address that question later, I'll say so. If not, I'll just talk about it right then and there. So please pipe in if you want to. If something's not clear, just say so. And again, there'll be time at the end of the presentation as well for hopefully a nice question and answer period. So anyway, hi everybody. I'm Richard Wiswall. I've been farming here at Cate Farm here in Central Vermont for the last 41 years. And I'm here to talk about the most unglamorous, unfun, and most fiercely avoided topic in farming, looking at the business side of farming. But oh, so important. You know, I know farmers that handle $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in gross sales and don't have a clear idea of where that money comes and goes. Don't leave it to hard and hope for your farm to succeed. I want to demystify some key business practices and kind of shine a light on the inner workings of the business so that your farm can be more profitable. And ultimately, my goal is to see more happy, prosperous, and less stressed out farmers. So let's get started. I don't want to keep records any more than anybody else. Now, I wrote a book on the business of organic farming, and I got this reputation as a record keeper. So be it. I want you to take records for the important reason of achieving your overarching goal. For me, that was to make more money and work less hours. Okay, so again, I want you to, not keep records just because you think it's a good thing or you've heard it's a good thing. I want to start by defining some key terms at first, so we're all on the same page. What is net profit? Let's imagine if you're a bus driver, or a teacher, or a hired carpenter, that you would have the salary to take home, and that's what you need to pay your food and beer and pizza and living expenses and clothing and other things and hopefully have some money left over for fun and savings or retirement needs. Okay, so you need to make your basic needs plus hopefully have a little bit extra. And so how much do you want to make in net profit? Okay, so we all have kind of a sense of what we could make out in the open market. So if I were to pound nails or be a carpenter, I could make $25 an hour. Okay, but if you were to get a job as a maybe a co-op staff person, you'd start out at $15 an hour. So again, the normal work hours of 40 hours a week times 50 weeks is 2,000 hours. That's a general standard, and you can see the numbers at $15 an hour. That would be $30,000 net income per year. Okay, so that's we all have a sense of what we can bring in. Farmers' work hours are a little different because during the growing season, pretty heavy hours during the warmer months, and then less during the winter months. But in this example here, you have 2,360 hours, per year, a little bit more than the 2,000. And you could actually figure out your hourly wages by taking your net profit and dividing it by the hours that you worked. In this example, if you were to have a net profit of $23,000 and $23,600, your hourly wage would be $10 an hour. Good or bad, that's up for you to decide. I just want you to quantify it so you can have a sense. Again, there's no right or wrong answers here. It's more of what's comfortable to you. Before we start, I'm going to go back one. Before we go on any further, I want everybody to take a pen and paper, if you have one with you, and take 10 seconds to think about how much net profit your farm should generate for you to feel comfortable working for the amount of work that you do on your farm. So again, no one's going to see this. You can, write it on a piece of paper on the corner and, hide it from everybody else. But it's writing down is important. So take just, a few more seconds and say, how much money does my farm, my financial goal, to figure out, is it worth it or not? I'm not going to ask you to share it, but it will be there for you. So in terms of business financial analysis, the macro tools, these are kind of the profit and loss, the balance sheet and cash flow projection are kind of standard operating procedures for any business. I'm not going to talk about them. They're subject to another talk, and you'll probably see that a lot of other places. I will talk a little bit about cash flow projection in a very non-numbers way, actually, and which is one of my favorite tools. And then there's micro tools, which are kind of shine a light on the inner workings of your business, which are mostly enterprise budgets or cost benefit analyses, where you can kind of figure out, is it worth buying something or not, or what the payback period is for a certain tool that you're thinking of buying. So we're going to talk about both of those kind of things coming up. And this is going to be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. Again, I'm going to put a lot of information out there. Have questions, please just go ahead and put them in the chat box. Okay. So this is the irrefutable business equation that every business has to abide by. Profit equals income minus expense. You have to have more income coming in than expense in order to have your net income. Okay. And in reality, this equation is done once a year at the end of the year, usually December or January, for your farm, where you take all your gross sales and then your expenses and see what your net profit is. But what happens is it's really the average of a lot of things that you do on the farm that get averaged into this year-end equation that will have many different kind of possibilities. So like in the first one, there's a huge profit because you have a big sales with little expenses. Second one is a small profit because income and expenses are about the same. And then the third one is like a negative profit or a loss because expenses are more than income. And you're going like, well, why would anybody do that? And I go like, I did it for a number of years, and it's actually pretty easy. An example would be if I had sheep, chickens, and pigs, and I'm raising them, and I go to the grain store and I buy grain and feed out all the animals. At the end of the year, I have, say, $100,000 worth of sales of meat and meat products, and I have a $60,000 grain bill. I have, no idea if the sheep, chickens, or pigs, which one is actually better than the others. And I can guarantee you that they're not all going to be the same. And so you have to do a little internal analysis to see which ones are actually paying the bills and which ones aren't. One of those three animals could actually be losing money and the other one could be making a lot of money. So you want to know this for yourself. This is what's going to separate you from every other farmer, because you'll know your business and how to make better money at it. So another thing about the fact is that, all these equations get averaged into your year-end look, that you can actually tweak them. So this little profit one might, well, maybe I could raise the sales price, I could lower expenses, or both, and actually make it more profitable. I could take this profitable one and maybe say, boy, I could reduce expenses even more and make it even more profitable. Bonus. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't say, well, I'm just going to sit back. If I'm charging $1.50 for my kale, and when the going rate is $2 wholesale, I should charge $2 and make even more money. And if something is really small profit, or say a negative profit, an actual loss, if you can't fix that from being a loss, think long and hard about keep doing it. And we can talk about loss leaders at the end of this talk if there's time, but your profitability will raise dramatically just from looking at these equations. So, okay, so I had, years and years ago, when I first started doing this, I had, 42 different crops I was growing, and, I analyzed it by profitability, not by acreage, but in terms of profit. So even if I was growing 1/10 of an acre, certain things were much more profitable than something I was growing 2 acres of. And I just drew a line through the thing saying, I'm just going to grow the top half. And instantly, just from my crop selection, my net profit increased by $10,000, it's less work and more money again. So here, this is your macro look, okay? And these are your micro look. I put this in because profit gets a bad word, and if you don't like the word profit, that's fine. Use sustainable income, use green wages, whatever you'd like to do. But just remember that we all need to make more money. Basic way we have to do things, and farmers need to put profit back into that triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. So again, don't let that word stumble you up. And we're going to talk about enterprise budgets right now, which I want to really make as simple as possible. And we're going to do some actually together, or I'm going to do it for you, but and you'll be able to see it. And in a workshop setting, we would actually do it together. And I try to do it under 10 minutes. I'm going to do this one in probably under 3 minutes, just so you can get a sense and have some eye-opening results about a couple of these things. So enterprise budgets are basically, a cost-benefit analysis of what you do on your farm, of all those things, whether it's blueberries, sheep, chickens, baking cider, raising milk, replacement heifers, whatever it might be. The most impact you're going to get is from the things that are bringing the most money into your bank account right now. So analyze those first, maybe the top 3, maybe the top 5, but just start with, the first couple. And once you get those done, the rest will fall into place. Again, the first one will take the longest, but the rest will be so much quicker. And again, I'll talk about not overtaking information. So there are 2 things when you're doing any kind of budget. You have to set the boundaries of what you're doing, okay? And assigning a labor rate that converts time that you put into it into a dollar figure. And, I always do what is normally done. So if I grow a 1/4 acre of carrots, that's what I'm going to put down as 1/4 acre carrots. If I normally press 20 gallons of cider at a pressing, that's what I'm going to do an enterprise budget for. If it's a 1/4 acre blueberries, whatever it is, do what you normally do, and that's your boundaries. And then your labor rate, I just use $15 an hour in this exercise. whatever your normal rate that your average rate that you're paying somebody. And I can't emphasize this enough. People take my workshops and they come out of the workshops and saying, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to record everything that everybody does on my farm, 24/7, 365 days a year. And they do that. And then at the end of the year, they have this pile of papers and they look through it and some are incomplete and they kind of look up and they throw their hands up in frustration and the whole process stops. Not the intended result. I want you to have a laser-like focus on what is really needed. And I'm going to emphasize this as we go along in the talk, okay? And I put the slide in as a reminder of what happens when you take over. Your arms get longer, your waist gets shorter, you just turn into a total geek. And good or bad, I want you to have this imprinted in your mind whenever you start taking over, taking too much information, so you can see what happens to people like me. So the budget making tip, we're going to go over this, but I wanted to have the slide up there for you to look at, reference later on. But basically, you set the parameters in labor rate, and you don't have to have done something. You can actually practice with anything, and which we will do later on. About say you're thinking about growing blueberries, or you're thinking about growing a couple of feeder pigs or salad mix, whatever it is. And then I usually use them in chronological order. I start in April when I'm tilling the ground and cultivate and then irrigate and pack and wash. And so a cover crop, I do it that way. You could do it other ways. I always fill in the easy numbers first. Don't get bogged down in the process. If you're trying to figure out the electrical cost of a brooder for your chicks, skip over it for now and figure out how much is the feed, what are the gross sales going to be, and the bigger numbers. You can always come back to those kind of things. Keep it moving. It won't take long, and you're going to see, if everybody's got a pen and paper, I want you to start doing this yourself, and you'll be able to do it, I think, by the end of this talk. And rates. So this is key. For enterprise budgeting to be simple, all you need to do is figure out the rates. And if you can figure out the rates, it means two variables. That means how many pounds per hour, how many row feet per hour, or how many bed feet weeded per hour, any of those kind of things. So if you're growing salad mix, and we used to grow salad mix, 22 plantings a year, and you seed it, you weed it, you pick it, you wash it, and you bag it. If I do that once or twice or 3 times, I will know my rate of what it takes to pick 25 bed feet, or to wash and pack 25 bags, or to or to seed it. Pushing a seeder is not going to change whether I have carrot seeds or beet seed in it. So once you have these rates down, stop taking information. You don't need to track all 20 plantings of salad mix. Just do 2 or 3. Check that rate maybe another time during the year, and you're done. You're done for not the rest of your life, but maybe a double check in a couple of years. And we're going to worry about overhead costs later. So now, this crop journal, we just keep a simple loose leaf book with handwritten notes on it about chronological order. And this is for a quarter acre of carrots, where I list in my handwriting everything that's done. So we start out by spreading fertilizer, we chisel bed form, seed, we cultivate, we flame weed, we irrigate, we hand weed, we cultivate again, we irrigate, hand weed again, we bed lift, we harvest, we disc, and then put cover crops on, and then we have wash and pack hours. And I did put columns in these, which normally we don't in our journal, but it's just to separate the human hours versus tractor hours. And again, this is just a documentation of what we're doing to a crop. Okay, we have 1 page for carrots, 1 page for beets, 1 page for daikon, 1 page for eggplant. In alphabetical order, we can find it. Simple, doesn't take a lot of time. but you just have to do it in time. The hardest thing to track when you're doing enterprise budgets or any kind of budgets is labor. You can easily look up the carrot seed bill, the bag bill, the fertilizer bill, row cover bill, any of that kind of stuff is got a paper trail. The things that doesn't have a paper trail, except for a paycheck, which is very broad, is that you don't really have a sense of how long it actually took you to push that seeder, how long it took you to cultivate, those kind of things. So those are things you want to really focus on recording, whether you do it with your smartphone or just on pen and paper and then record it into a book later on, which is the way we do it still. And then once you have this information, you can actually put a dollar figure on it. And again, I did 3 columns here where you have the labor. Again, this is at a pretty low labor rate. This is like at $12.55 an hour, I believe. This is way back when I wrote the book. And, we pay people, on average $23 to $24 an hour for the same work right now. And, we still make money. It's my job to sharpen my pencil so I know where to make money with those kind of wages. We really believe that people should get paid well and that I should get paid adequately as well, too. So here in this example, you have a 1/4 acre carrots and you have total expenses of $1,800. And, the sales are part retail at a higher price, part wholesale at a lower price. And you have, for this 1/4 acre, $3,900 rough net profit. This is before overhead expenses like electricity, websites, and all that kind of thing. But anyway, so for a 1/4 acre, that's $3,900. That's almost $16,000 for a acre, a net profit, rough net profit per acre. I'm like, is that good or bad? Well, I thought it was pretty good. Boy, if I grew 2 acres of carrots and sold them all at those rates, I would be making $30,000. I could probably live pretty well, especially for a 6-month crop for something like that. So I said, well, that's not bad. But it really didn't have a sense because it was just kind of a stake in the ground where I said, well, I got to try some other ones and see which ones, how they compare, just for comparative purposes. So I did, and that's where I rated my 42 crops in profitability. Invariably, you're going to come across some things that are going to be kind of a little bit stumbling blocks, but I'm going to do a couple of these here for you right now, just so you can get a sense of how it's done. And I'm going to give you a link to this talk that will give you a link to a lot of information that will help speed this whole process up. And these are all important questions, like when you're thinking about, well, should I deliver wholesale or farmers market? And I'm going to address that briefly later on. How long does it take to, run a tractor? And right now, we'll just go over tractor costs right now. So let's say I buy a used 2-wheel drive diesel tractor, a good utility tractor, can do all sorts of stuff. It's in running condition, say a 1980s tractor, and I'm going to spend, okay, you can write this stuff down if you want to. Say I buy a used tractor for $8,000, okay, and I'm going to use it for 10 years. And after that 10 years, it's still going to have some value, and I'm going to put it on Craigslist, and I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to say I'll sell it for $4,000. Okay, so I get, some value out of it at the end of 10 years. So I'm spending $4,000 over 10 years. It's costing me $400 annually to own this tractor, just to have it parked in my shed. That's what it's costing. It's depreciating, and we're not going to talk about that today, but it's going down in value from being used. Sometimes I buy an $8,000 tractor and sell it for $8,000 10 years later, but I'm going to say we're going to have some depreciation. Average annual repairs varies widely. It could be an oil change one year. It could be a $500 tire the next year. It could be a clutch for $1,500. Sometimes it's very minimal depending on what you do. But on average, I'm going to say $400 a year. So that'd be over 10 years. That's $4,000 worth of repairs. That's quite a bit, actually. And then average annual fuel cost depends on how much you use it, but I'm going to say $200 is for that's about average. And so that would be the annual costs for this tractor to use this tractor would be $1,000. Okay, that's a good thing to know. $1,000. So now I'm thinking, well, $1,000 to use this tractor. What does that really mean? And so tractors don't have like a odometer on them. They're not measured in miles, they're measured in hours that they're used. And so they have an hour meter on the tractor. And the tractor, say the annual cost is $1,000. If I use the tractor 200 hours, which is kind of what I do on, a vegetable farm here, the actual hourly rate for that tractor use is $5 an hour. Now, what can you rent with 4 wheels for $5 an hour? Maybe a pair of roller skates, but I really don't think so. And to think that you have a 50 horsepower tractor that is running for $5 an hour was an eye-opening thing to me. And I'm not trying to sell you tractors or have you buy a tractor. I just want you to shine this light on your business and say, wow, that is cheap. At least I think it's cheap. If I use it 100 hours, I might have less fuel and less repairs, but say that same equation, it would be $10 an hour. And I put down, if I used it 1 hour, just as kind of a, not a joke, but just to make you think about this, is that it would be $1,000 an hour for that 1 hour. It wouldn't be, because you wouldn't have the same repairs and fuel. But generally, the more hours you use it, the less it goes down. Okay, now these are my tractors. I have some other ones, but these are the 3 ones I use. This is the first one, tractor one, is a brand new John Deere with 4-wheel drive with a bucket loader that I bought, well, over 10 years now. And even a brand new tractor like that pencils out to be the cost per hour of $5.65 an hour. Again, when I rent a tractor from someone else because I need something done, $60, $80 an hour is what I'm paying. That's what I have to pay for a tractor. But I know now I know that it only costs me $5 to $6 for all my tractors. The Cub, which is only used fewer hours, the cultivating tractor only, is more expensive. Again, a whopping $6 an hour to run my Cub. It takes maybe more repairs on average, but it's got a very high resale value. So all these things, again, I really realize that they're eye-opening to the inner workings of my farm. This is the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for increasing your net profit. So I wanted to point it out here somewhat in a joking way, but I'll give you an example. 10% increase of all your products across the board. Say you're selling a bulb of garlic for $1, I'm going to charge you $1.10. I sell a bunch of cilantro for $2, I'm going to charge $2.20 for that bulb. I'm charging $3 a pound of tomatoes, I'm going to charge $3.30 a pound. That's not that much a jump, but in the end, say you're grossing $100,000 a year and you're spending, say, $70,000, that you have a $30,000 net profit. But if by raising all my sales prices to 10%, all of a sudden my gross sales go to $110,000, my expenses remain the same, and all of a sudden I made another $10,000 out of thin air from just a price card change. Again, the obvious barrier is that you can't raise prices until people will buy them anymore. But if you're below market price and you can get better value out of your sales dollar, please do. We're going to, again, this is more review and after we do a couple of budgets. But the thing that I want you to remember to do, focus on rates, and we'll do that in the next few slides. And if you don't have the rate, so if you don't know how long it takes to wash and bag lettuce mix, take a clipboard and say, we need to figure this out, and then write it down. Do it 2 or 3 times. Post it in your pack house or wherever you're going to be washing. In terms of making your job simpler in terms of quantifying things, you should measure your walking pace. Mine is 2.67, 2 2/3 feet. So I know pretty quickly I can just pace off 100 and know that it's 267 feet, 100 paces. So what you do is walk next to a 96-foot long greenhouse, pace it back and forth, normal walking pace, nothing you're trying to prove, and then take a calculator and figure out what your walking pace is. That's a very good thing to do. You don't need to use any metering wheels. I do this, write job likes and dislikes when I work with farmers because it's really important. Life is short, okay? And you want to do the things that you want to do. And so write down the things you like and don't dislike. You know, I really like, you know, being out in the field, riding a tractor, hanging out with the crew, all that kind of thing. I dislike collecting money from vendors that don't pay. I just like having to fire people. You know, so I write these things down, and I just have to maybe sometimes say that's part of my job and that's just the way it's going to be. Or if I dislike record keeping, delegate it to somebody else, have somebody else do it on your farm. Keeping a note for mileage log, very simply, just, you know, you don't have to record. You definitely want to record the mileage on any vehicle that you're expensing, because the IRS does a pretty good job of reimbursing you for that. And all you have to do is have a loose leaf book in your car that says, for me, I just write M1X, which means a trip to Montpelier one time. For deliveries, that means it's 10 miles each way. I know that M1X means 20 miles. And then at the end of the year, I can just total up all the X's and it will give me my mileage. And I always have a receipt or an invoice or a sales slip to prove that I actually did it. So the IRS, you know, if I get audited, I'm not worried about it. If you don't like labor tracking, great, have somebody else do it. Again, don't remember my picture. Do not overtake info. Now, if you do have a pen and paper, pencil and paper, I want you to write some things down, and we're going to go over this together. This is going to be a quick budget. I call them quick budgets because I'm going to assume that you have this 25 foot long bed, which is going to be 6 feet wide, 4 foot wide bed with some pathways or wheel tracks on either side, and we're going to split it. So it's going to be, say, center to center wheel track is going to be 6 feet, 25 feet long, and we're going to seed some salad mix, say May 1st. Okay, so we're going to go out there, and I use my little earthway push seeder, and I put rows every 2 inches, you know, and I'm just going back and forth, walking back and forth, seeding it pretty thickly so I don't have to, I minimize weeding that way and increase the yield. So on May 1st, I go out there, and the thing about this quick budget system is that I can say I have this blank 25 foot bed that I could plant anything. I could plant corn, beans, peas, salad mix, carrots, beets, and I just want to do a quick budget to see, well, what's a return on this lettuce mix potentially. So I have these rates. These are from my farm, and you know, it takes for me to, you know, I seed it and I let it grow, and if I don't have to cover it with row cover and I get natural rain, which I usually try to time, you know, it takes me, you know, I seed it. There's probably a few minutes in seeding it, and then 80 minutes to weed pick, which is an hour and a third, 40 minutes and 40 minutes. So if it's $15 an hour, the 80 minutes is 1 1/3 hours would be $20. 40 minutes of wash and cleanup is $10. And the same thing, 40 minutes of bagging would be $10. Then there's some bags and twist ties. Say the seed, the bags, and twist ties are $18. And so that's about a kind of a rough $58 worth of kind of rough expenses. Okay, and then at the bottom, I just wrote down a yield of what it comes out to be, $168. So if I take the $168 minus the $58, that leaves me a kind of a very rough working net profit of $110. So is that good or bad? I mean, I wish we were in a room where we could all talk, but I don't really know. I mean, for me, as a carpenter, I can make $25 an hour. I could make $110 before lunch and not have to worry about the seeding business and worrying about hailstorms or weeds or, going out in the rain to pick. So is it really worth it? I don't know. It's not a good gauge. So I needed some perspective, and I said, okay, well, let's put it in a larger perspective. And so what I did was I said, okay, well, what's the net profit per acre? That's what I really kind of want to know. So, well, how many of these 25-foot beds fit in an acre? Well, you can do the math. There's 43,560 square feet in an acre. And this example, the parameter is 25 bed feet by 6 feet. That's 150 square feet. So there's 290 of these beds in an acre. So if I take 290 and multiply it by the kind of this rough net profit of 110. That's almost $32,000 of net profit per acre in 4 weeks. So now, if you haven't been paying attention all this time, this would be a good time to start paying attention. Okay. That is some serious money. And we're going to go over some other things that are going to shine a light on this as well. And again, this is minus the prep time and the fertilizing. It's assuming a bed that's already made. And it's not including the overhead expenses like internet and taxes and those kind of things. And it's also assuming that, maybe the produce truck, refrigerated produce truck comes to your pack house door and picks up the product so you don't have any marketing costs. There's other things, and we'll go into that in more detail. But this is something that kind of opened my eyes, going like, wow, 2 acres of salad mix, and I could be making 60,000 a year for growing season. Yeah, it's not such a bad thing. So animal folks out there, and maybe vegetable folks with animals, I just wanted to do this. Just again, this is a simple exercise to rough out the numbers. I have another one for you to take home after this. The feeder pigs, I love pigs, and to raise a couple of feeder pigs, that we buy a feeder pig for $100 for an 8-week-old pig, and then we raise it up for 6 months, and we put through 800 pounds of feed. So that, just in this example, again, if you have a pen and paper, you can write all this down. But say a piglet costs $100. The feed, I think the feed is more expensive now, but the feed is $360. So that's like $460. The yield, depends on how they grow and everything else. But, say 210 pounds of cut and wrapped at $5 a pound, let's say, is $1,050. So around $1,000 of yield. $30 minus the 460, okay, I'm making, 5, 6. There's also there's other costs involved, that we're some smaller costs like bedding and fencing and those kind of things, transport to the slaughter. But we also need to figure out that it's going to take us some time to do chores, and I'm going to say maybe half an hour a day to do chores, which means going out and feeding the pigs, cleaning up, scratching them, whatever. So half an hour a day, it's 15 minutes twice a day. And that's going to be at $15 an hour. That's $7.50 a day for 180 days, which comes out to be $1,350. That really kills the budget. Okay, you're taking in $1,050, and your labor is $1,300, plus your pig is $100, plus your feed is $360. And again, I want to let you know that I like pigs, but I want to know the numbers. And again, I do this because it's important to be able to know this, so you're not going about your business and saying, how come I'm never making any money? Again, this is just a quick budget. There's a lot of other things that go into it. But again, I want to just do that for you. And this is a take home for you. Okay, now I'm going to assume that this is adolescent spinach, medium-sized spinach that you sell for $4.50 a pound. You can use that number for a budget to, for a sales figure. And that instead of picking it all at once and having a produce truck pick it up all at once, you're doing it actually in, multiple pickings where you're, I like to clear cut. I don't cherry pick in terms of picking the outer leaves. I go through and I cut clean, a 1/10 of the thing, and then I come back and do another 1/10. So that's the way I do it. And these are, picks and washes. And so you get a sense. These are just some cheat sheets that you can do and see how much money you make. Again, with an NRCS greenhouse that is paid for, the hoop house itself, it really is free to use. So it's just a matter of what's going on inside the ground. See how it works out. I'm not going to divulge whether it's good or bad. I just want you to, if you want to play around with it after this talk, great. So of the lessons learned, I want you to always look at the big numbers first, because they're the ones that have the most impact for the budget. So for the lettuce, the biggest is, going to be the, well, the weeding and picking and the washing and packing. I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to find cheaper twist ties, because it's not going to really make a big difference in the budget. Okay? And for the pigs, I wouldn't worry about how much electricity is used in the electric fence when you have some problems to solve before that. Okay, so those are the things where, focus on the right numbers. And labor is often in any farm budget a very third or more of your sales. A very large, expenditure on any expense listing of your farm. That's not good or bad. It just is. Okay, and you have to realize this. You don't want to be paying yourself nothing. Farmers are famously guilty of self-exploitation, and don't do it. Pay yourself well. Figure out how much net you want to do it and achieve that. Plan for it. Don't want to depend on underpaid staff or volunteer labor, because you want to be able to pay your people well. We should all be able to have fair trade where farmers make money, our employees make money, and the customer gets a fair shake at the retail counter. Okay, but to do that, you have to be able to push the pencil and make money. But you just to realize that labor is often a big thing, but don't discount it. And in the pig budget that we just did, if you don't count in labor, it all of a sudden looks profitable, and you're going like, wow. And so I'm making money on pigs. I'm going to get more than 2 pigs, but you're not taking your labor into account. So again, we all share one thing, and it's we all have 24 hours in a day, and we need some for sleep, some for family, some for eating. And the point is your work hours are limited, and you have to use them wisely. Okay. And again, efficiency of scales will change the equation. Having 12 pigs will be a lot different than just having 2 pigs, but you need to make more money for all those other things, like for overhead expenses plus things to live on. I'm going to use overhead. I grow twice as many carrots I ordered. Twice as many row covers, direct relation. Fixed, which I don't like, because there's really nothing fixed, because my contracts get broken, the phone bill goes up, taxes go up, whatever it is. So I'm going to use the word overhead as things that are spread out over the entire operation. And these are things that you have to pay your internet, and you have to pay your web design bill, whatever it might be, and that you need to allocate them to these various enterprises, whether it's the lettuce picks or the pigs. And you can do it by sales, or you can do it by acreage, but you have to account for these overhead expenses, or you're going to have an off-farm job to pay for them. Lynn, do we have any questions that need to get looked at right now?
We don't have any questions right now. You were cutting out a little bit on the last thing you said. So if you want to maybe quick repeat that, but we don't have any questions right now. It said my internet is unstable, and so I'm going to keep going through, and then if we have questions at the end, because I want to cover a few more slides, if that's all right. If Okay.
if that okay. I mean, in terms of this previous slide here, is that the one that was breaking up?
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit during that slide.
I'm going to just skip over for now. We'll come over to it. Overhead costs are generally things that are spread out: advertising donations, paid donations, the portion of your farm that uses electricity, all these kind of things. You can see the list here. And there's a spreadsheet which you can use yourself. Again, the link is at the end, where it'll list all your overhead expenses. And then it's a good thing to know, it could be $15,000, it could be $30,000 for your farm, which is often an eye-opening thing to say, boy, I'm spending that much money on all these things. Yeah, I spend tons of money on insurance and I never use it. But yeah, So once you get that total number, you can divide it by the, if you grow 10 acres, you can say it by the acre, or you can apportion it by sales. However you want to do it makes no difference. Again, this will all be later on. And then in terms of from NOFA, Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont, did a project. A number of projects on cost of production will be available at the end, the link for this, so you can do it yourself. But basically, if you're selling product through either CSA or farm stand, you can figure out how much it actually costs you to do this. And the wholesale one is pretty easy, but you're just putting on a truck and figuring out the cost of that, the labor, doing that kind of thing. The cost to do one farmer's market, you figure out how much it takes to load the truck, travel there, set up, market, and vend. And again, I did farmer's market personally for 26 years. So, all these costs add up: vehicle costs, rental fees, amortized tables with scales and umbrellas and all that kind of stuff. How many markets you do here? Generally, it would, cost us $500 just to go to market and show up. If it rained and we didn't sell anything, it just cost us $500. So we would need to make gross sales of $1,000 or $1,500 or more just to make that pay for itself. And the same thing with the CSA. There's a lot of time, some of it retailing or being there to, staff the pickup or to do all the footwork in, the wintertime to get CSA members. So these all have things, and you can have different. And it's really good to figure out what your total marketing cost is. And again, you can do it by acre. But again, this will bring, marketing costs will be 12%, maybe 15% of your gross sales. Overhead costs will be about 15% of your gross sales. And, that's a chunk, and people say, oh, I don't spend that much. Well, if you're not counting your time to go to market, yeah, you're probably not spending that much. But if you count your time, you will be spending that kind of money. And it's a good thing to know how much it is. And so one thing I ask you to do is to conceptualize a pallet of produce in your walk-in cooler, mixed veggies or mixed meats, whatever it is, and actually, say, okay, I could either put that pallet on a truck and bring it to the local co-op, or I could bring it to market, or I could bring it to a CSA. This would allow you to take that pallet of produce and see what the different value is, because you're going to get a higher value at the farmer's market than you would at a wholesale account. But the time saved would be different. So this is a good way of comparing, what marketing channels really work for you. Again, this will be something I'll show you at the end of the talk. You have 10 minutes to go, and I just wanted to be really cover the material so you can have a sense of what's going on. But paid labor is percentage gross sales are going to be 35%. If you're up at the 50%, you're inefficient and you should think about it. If you're down at 30%, that's kind of fine. If you're 25, I'd say thumbs up. As long as you're paying your folks well and paying yourself well. And basically listened what your sales venue is and gives you a net profit. Again, the big factors in profitability are going to be the price and yield and the harvest and pack out. So this and hand weeding, this is where you want to really focus your efforts on efficiency, because that's where the big numbers are. It's really hard to pin down, but I put them down just for, kind of a gauge for everybody. Gross sales, 5 to 20,000. It could be almost $80,000, for gross sales if you're talking, salad mix and other things. Yield benchmarks, you can find UVM's got great ones. The paid labor to gross sales, people should figure it out. Not your own labor, but what you're actually paying in labor plus workers' comp and plus employee taxes. Hopefully it's around the 35%. If not, think about it. Net profit varies widely. 25% would be good. So you're making $100,000 in sales, 25,000 to keep. Okay. Overhead sales, overhead to gross would be, in the 15% range. And quickly, I'm going to go over CSA profitability, because there's probably a lot of CSA farmers out there that do CSA only farms, and they're going like, why do I need to do all these things that Richard's saying I have to do when I'm, selling a bunch of shares and paying my people and distributing the produce, and I don't have to do any of this fine-tuned analysis. And I used to agree with that. I thought that CSA, standalone CSAs are actually different beasts. But then I thought about it, and some CSAs were actually paying their people very well and working normal hours, and other CSAs were depending on volunteer labor. And I'm like, what's that about? So I'm going to give you two imaginary CSAs. One is my Richards all corn CSA, where I'm selling. Okay, let's start out. I'm selling shares for $500 for 20 weeks. So that's $25 a week that's coming in, or I'm distributing $25 a week to my customers. And so in one end of the continuum, I have my all corn CSA, where I'm doing $5 dozen corn, 5 of them a week. So you're getting $25 worth of corn. On the other end of the continuum, I have my all kale CSA, which are getting, say, 10 bunches of kale at $2.50 a bunch. Okay, they're both getting 25 bucks. And corn is my favorite dog to kick because it's so sought after and so undervalued. And kale is one of those sleepers where it's making me tons of money that nobody knows about. And so I like to use that as an example. So if I'm growing my all corn CSA, and say I'm selling it to a farm stand or a restaurant, they might want to buy it. And if my all kale CSA, I might be able to do the same thing. That if on my all corn CSA, I'm barely scraping by. I'm not paying myself. I'm depending on volunteer labor. The barn roof leaks. I don't have money to fix it. I'm not investing in new equipment to be more efficient. I'm not saving for retirement. It's just, I'm scraping by and road to burnout. On my all kale CSA, I'm actually making myself money. I'm paying my people 25 bucks an hour, and I'm saving for retirement. I am fixing the barn roof when it needs to. I'm buying equipment that makes it even more efficient, so I'm even farther in on the other end of the continuum. And that's where I want to be. The point is that on a diversified vegetable CSA, the crop mix that you have is going to move along that continuum. So the more profitable things you pick and move towards that all kale side, the better for you. Okay, so then when we had a CSA for years, we just dropped growing peas, beans, and some other things that were just not making money, and told people, say, we can't make money, go somewhere else to buy them, and our profit will went up. Okay, so I just wanted to address that really quickly. And then I also wanted to get the concept of cash flow. I have 5 minutes, Lynn, and I will try to wrap this up, and I might skip over a few slides so we have time for questions. And maybe, yeah, I'll just do this as my last slide, or second to last slide. Cash flow is the kind of thing where you want to analyze your business to see how much money you have so you don't run out of money. Okay, normally it's a sheet with 250 numbers on it of 12 columns of January, February, March, and then a listing of all your expenses and sales. It's just like I have to use good language here. It's a complicated piece of page. It's very important information, very good information, but here's a concept of how it works without any numbers except 0. Say I have a daily job and I get paid a regular wage, and I have the same expenses of rent and food and clothing. So that is a very smooth cash flow. Well, wouldn't it be so nice if farmers had this kind of cash flow? But basically, my weekly paycheck is, offset, my regular income is offset by expenses, and it's pretty smooth out over the course of the year. But farmers don't have that. They have this very lumpy cash flow because they make a lot of money during the growing season, and then they kind of go down at the end of the season and kind of go below 0 because they're starting to buy seeds, and they're thinking about buying row covers and all those kind of things. And so down here, you're actually running out of money. Now, I could have the most profitable kale operation in the world, but I'd be out of business, because if I run out of money, I stop paying my employees. They stop showing up to work. I stop paying my power bill, my tax bill. I get my land repossessed. All these kind of things. You're just out of business. You can't run out of money. So my point is that even though you can have a very profitable business, that you have to anticipate these shortfalls in money and borrow money. And I'm not advertising borrowing money. I just want you to look at your picture so you don't get in the situation of profitable business going out of business because they run out of money. That's the whole point of doing a cash flow analysis. I'm going to skip over this. this and this things to do. But I'm just going to go back to issues that people have. Now, this is a friend of mine who grows India. I saw this picture and I go like, wow, that's a lot of plants. And then I thought, well, that's kind of inefficient. You only did one layer. Anyway, so this is the cost of reduction project that I was talking about. I worked on quite a bit with NOFA that you can look at. They have lots of great information. So they have these online. I don't know if you can see these things, but they have these little booklets for whole farm ratios, which inside they show, you know, these different things. They also have, you know, these things. So if you're growing onions or salad mix or other things, it'll tell you, you know, what the general, see if you can see that. It's kind of a general breakdown of what your expenses are going to be and sales. So anyway, those are great information. You can find all that there. Lynn, do you have any questions in the chat box?
Yeah, so thank you, Richard. We did have one comment of Andrew reached out saying he's got some Excel spreadsheets that I'd be willing to share. So if everyone wants to see that in the chat. So we're going to let people unmute and turn on their video if they want to ask any questions. But to start out, I'm going to ask a question.
Sure.
So thinking about, you know, record keeping and analyzing your farm, when you have an established farm, you have a lot of knowns. But when you're starting a farm, you have a lot of unknowns. And like if you're trying to write a business plan. So just if you could give some advice to folks who are getting ready to start a farm or are in their infancy.
Sure, that's a great question, because I did want to point that out, that, you know, if you've been doing this for a few years, you know, 2 or 3 or more years, you want to be doing this kind of, start thinking about this kind of analysis. If you're starting out farming and you're just trying to, you know, get the ball rolling, I probably wouldn't worry about this fine-tuned analysis. You have so much to learn in terms of just the seasonality, the marketing, the, you know, how to balance your checkbook, all those kind of things, that put this off. It's good to know that it's there and that you want to work towards it, but I probably would not advocate doing this. I mean, let's face it, the learning curve is incredibly steep, you know, on starting a farm. So, you know, fasten your seatbelts and prepare for takeoff, and you just, you know, hold on for dear life to get to the, you know, to where it starts to level off a little bit. Once you're there, then you can start doing that kind of work. And so, not to talk you out of, I want you to be aware of it. Did that answer your question then?
Yep, that's great. Does anyone
Okay.
else want to ask any questions? We only have 1 minute left, so.
I'm going to tell a story for a minute, okay? If that's all right. And if somebody has a question, they can chip in. But is any, if heard of Roger Bannister, I'd love it for you to just type a Y or a yes in your chat, who is a guy who should be very famous. But in 1954, he was a runner who cracked the 4-minute mile. Okay, so now people have been trying to crack the 4-minute mile running for thousands of years. I mean, since Greek and Roman times, they've been doing everything. They've been training. They've been trying to, nutrition-wise, they would give tiger's milk. They would actually get chased by tigers. They would do anything to try to run faster than 4-minute miles. They just couldn't do it. They figured the human body was not able to do it. The wind resistance was too great, not possible. So here comes Roger Bannister in 1954, and he breaks the 4-minute mile. Huge news. And now if I was Roger Bannister, I'd go like, wow, I'm just broke a 1,000-year-old running record. I'm sitting pretty. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to, you know, not, you know, worry about anybody breaking this record for a while. The very next year, 37 people ran a 4-minute mile, broke it. The year after, 300 people broke the 4-minute mile. So what had changed? Like, did Nike come out with a new shoe, or did Cliff Bar come out with some nutritional bar? No, it's all in your head. It's like it broke a barrier that you can do it, and all of a sudden people could do it. And I bring this example up because I think that if you know that it's possible to make money farming, you will make money farming. Okay, and it is very possible to make very good money farming, but you need to have the knowledge that it is out there to exist. And I will end my talk right there. Thank you all for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard. We really appreciate it.
Sure.